Bandwidth for the Hauger History Educational Podcast, graciously donated by Podbean.com. Podbean thousands of podcasts, or start your own today for free at Podbean.com. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. is my favorite American. Bravery as notable as any figure. Humility to take on a great cause without expecting personal gain or fame. And dignity, the belief in rights and equality, with the presence of mind and persistence to continue his important work regardless of the consequences. Students, this podcast is a preview of a great man in all senses. I encourage you to follow up this podcast with some research of your own. Welcome to the Hauger History Podcast with Mr. Hauger. I am the second part, and we're here on Martin Luther King Day, January 16th, 2017. Hope you're doing well wherever you are listening. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. You can subscribe on iTunes and on YouTube at youtube.com/Danny Hauger, Hauger. Today, I just wanted to post some thoughts and a little bit of information you might not know that you might not hear today about Dr. King. Let's just get started and dive right in. Dr. King, of course, was a Baptist minister and an educated man. Did you know, though, that he started college at the age of 15 at Morehouse College, then went to Crozer Theological Seminary, got his bachelor's, and took graduate school at Boston University, where he excelled. He was well-read. He gained perspective and theories from philosophers and became the school class president his senior year in a class of mostly whites. We often speak about King's role as a social activist, his pivotal role in standing in the American civil rights movement from the mid-1500s until his assassination in 1968. Inspired by advocates of nonviolence such as Gandhi, King worked towards equality for African Americans and all Americans, the economically disadvantaged. He stood up for victims of injustice. He was the driving force behind cornerstone events such as the Montgomery bus boycott and the March on Washington, which helped bring about such landmark legislation as the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964, and he's remembered each year on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a U.S. federal holiday since the year before my birth, 1986. But here's a few tips you might not have known, according to news foxes. His birth name was Michael, not Martin. The names were changed for him and his father as they learned about Martin Luther, the leader of the Protestant Reformation. King Sr. changed his own name as well of his 5-year-old son at the time, so he was born Michael King Jr. His I Have a Dream speech was not his first at the Lincoln Memorial. 6 years before that famous date, he was among one of the civil rights leaders who spoke in the shadows of Abraham Lincoln during the prayer pilgrimage for freedom in 1957 on May 17th. And that was a major speech arguing for the rights to vote and to give us the ballot. It was a well-reviewed speech, and it put him in position as one of the most powerful speakers in the United States at the time. According to the King Center, the civil rights leader, Martin Luther King Jr., went to jail nearly 30 times. He was arrested for acts of civil disobedience, trumped up charges, like when he was jailed in Alabama in 1956 when he was driving 30 miles per hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone. Any reason, any calling, any uprising was a reason that King would be unfairly jailed or accused during the time. And there were detractors everywhere, just as there would soon to become supporters because of the work he was doing. But on September 20th, 1958, King was in Harlem, and nearly a decade before he was assassinated, there was another attempt on his life at a department store when he was signing for his new book, and a woman, Isola Ware Curry, approached him with a 7-inch blade, a letter opener, and it came to rest along the inside of his aorta. King underwent hours of surgery. Surgeons told him that one sneeze or one false movement would have killed him based on the damage and the devastating attack. And King issued a statement later on, reaffirming his nonviolent principles and saying that he felt no ill will toward this mentally ill attacker. And there's many, many more facts. A million stories, tons of books, and they deserve to be read, and they deserve for you to go out and seek them and find them, students. I just want to share a few thoughts. A man that can undergo such things, such bigotry, prejudice, violence, unfairness, and continue to fight with passion and rigor and belief and faith and strength is something that I cannot even fathom. The things that I would think to voice my opinion for or to back or to support today, I have all the comfort safety, security. And he did not. He did not have those insurances. And yet he worked tirelessly for his efforts and for his beliefs. And those are the heartbeats of what I feel like it is to be an American. And to have free speech, to fight for your rights, and to do so in a nonviolent way, even when people are violent and hateful towards you. That's the largest that a human being can become. And that's the whole of the human spirit at its best. And I know when we learn about so many features and people in history, we tend to get taught their vices over time. New discoveries, journals, things come out. And Dr. Martin Luther King is one of those great, for me, personally, an untainted figure. Someone who was heroic. And someone who ultimately gave his life as a constant reminder that we need to treat each other better. Creeds, races, all things aside, we're all humans. And that's it. That's the way to leave the earth a better place. There's no better way for me to end the podcast. So thank you, Dr. King. Your legacy lives on. And if the smallest I can do with my tiny little podcast is to spend 7 minutes as a thank you. Thank you. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening.